Hello, how are you doing? Malika here in another episode on contribution of From the Heart. This one, I've been wanting to do this for a while. Excuse the shaking, that's not helping at all. Anyway, I'm going to shoot this straight on through. We'll see how it goes. Trying to wind down, but it was just like I felt in my soul this wave of energy just to take action and do some of this today. So for a while, I've been wanting to do a series on gaslighting because it's so complex and there's so many layers. So what I'm going to start with first is like self-deception and gaslighting. And the reason why I'm starting with this as an entry point, and I think it's really fascinating, is that somewhere in this video, maybe even as the thumbnail, that I'm going to use an image or show you an image of a concert that Kanye had releasing his Donda. I don't even know if he's released the album yet, but he lights himself on fire. And for those who have been aware of some of the statements that Kanye has made or the way he's moving, I think it's very symbolic and fascinating that he gaslit himself literally on stage and lit himself on fire. So just so that we all have the same understanding of gaslighting, I just wanted to briefly read a terminology in case you're not familiar with it. And basically gaslighting is loosely defined as making someone question their reality. It's also used to describe someone who persistently puts forth a false narrative, which leads another person to doubt their own perceptions to the extent that they become disoriented and distressed, and maybe even questioning their own sanity. So, usually we refer to gaslighting as somebody doing this outside of us. And from my own personal experience, there has been times that I have to own up to when I have questioned myself, right? And so there's whether it's another person uh, or group of people or however that works, which I'll get into with the series of gaslighting, there's always on some level an internal gaslighting. So if you're being gaslit by somebody outside of you, there's also some gaslighting that you are doing to yourself in order to be gaslit. And this is not trying to like blame the victim or anything like that, but it is in support of recognizing our power, authority, and learning opportunities. So this is meant to be an empowering video around that because I have gaslit myself and been gaslit by others. And I think on some level we all have, especially when I get into the bigger picture of that. Okay, so now that we know about the gaslighting and have that shared terminology, I want to talk about the self deception and gaslighting and questioning ourselves in a very simple way that we can do that is if we get an idea, an inspiration to write a book or something. I'll just use that as a through line. And then the gaslighting is like thinking that we don't have what it takes. Can I do this? So this is like, I can't do this. I don't know how. I've never written a book before. Nobody will want to read it. Like all of these things are ways that we can gaslight ourselves. Because if the idea comes to us to write a book, on some level, either the resources will present themselves and or we have the inner resources available to us to do it. It may not be in this moment, but it might be 5 years from now, like for it all to come together. So generally, when we are convincing ourselves of our smallness and inability to do something, that's a form of gaslighting. Or our grandiosity is another form of self-deception and gaslighting. And in politics, I'm not going to name any names because, where we put our energy, we fuel where we put our energy and attention. So I'm not going to name names or give people more energy than need be. But if you want to explore that and see about the grandiosity of gaslighting, start looking at the news and Google some things. And there's no lack of good material to see what gaslighting looks like. Oh, and there's a great movie. I can't think of the name right now, but I'll put it in the description, which is another powerful example of self-deception and gaslighting, um, and how other people were gaslighting this person too, because it happens in concert, inside as well as outside. There's always like co-conspirators. So now that I've talked about kind of like how it can play out, um, there's so many different levels to gaslighting. And what I want to say is, in my personal experience, sometimes self-deception gaslighting has been beneficial. And when I say beneficial, what I mean by that is that if there's an experience of self-deception, sometimes it can help us cope and survive, because sometimes we're not ready and or have the faculties and or reserves, and or skills and or support to deal with the raw dog truth of a matter or situation. And an example, of that, let's see, there in my own life, there were people growing up, specifically one person in my life growing up, that and my survival was intertwined with this person. But in order to stay in relationship with that person, there was a part of me that had to disconnect from my intuition unconsciously. I wasn't aware of it at the time, but there was a part of me that had to disconnect from my intuition and that inner knowing in order to be in relationship with this person. And I can't even say that they were consciously trying to manipulate or gaslight me, but if somebody is gaslighting themselves and so disconnected from truth, then they can't help but do that to other people and move that way in the world. So I really don't think it was anything necessarily personal. But I was not in a place and or ready to be able to see that truth yet. And so to make it through that situation, I had to disconnect from those things in order to survive. And then when I got the tools, resources, when I had the bandwidth to face that, that's when I was able to face it. So I say that to say that sometimes we will gaslight ourselves in order to stay in community and or relationship because we are not yet ready. And it's kind of a protective device. So I'm not going to say that it's a bad thing. It served me in the way that I needed to be served at that particular time. And then when I was ready to face the truth, and when I was ready to deal with it, and when I had the reserves and the ability and the support, then that's when it was like the scales started falling from my eyes or from my consciousness, and I was able to see how I was gaslighting myself in a situation and being gaslit. So I think the other thing that is really important with being gaslit is, in society, we're really groomed to be gaslit. This goes into, and I'll get into more of this later, but we're really groomed to be gaslit when we are looking outside of ourselves for truth and outside of ourselves for an authority. And I will say that there are, you hear people talk about brainwashing, right? But you don't hear people talk about heart washing. Like there's a level of intelligence from our heart, our intuition, that really can't be manipulated. And that's why it's not taught, because an important part of gaslighting, right, is someone else having kind of power. And so the other thing that I just want to offer is that if you are disconnecting from your intuition about things, right, and talking yourself out of things, that's kind of an alert or a telltale, pay attention that you might be deceiving yourself. And that's okay, because maybe you're not ready to face whatever that information is. Sometimes it can be a lot. So that's just part one. I'd love to hear from you below your thoughts of the self-deception and gaslighting that I've shared. If there's anything that's unclear, your own personal experiences. I've done it probably in so many different ways, but relationships, one-on-one relationships, comes forward the most tangible examples, especially in dating. Love to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and take good care until the next time. Peace.